Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at family, that core part of pretty much all our lives.
hmm
But we're doing it through the lens of, well, the English language.
Yeah.
We got some really fascinating material today.
Yeah, it shows how the words English speakers use for their relatives.
Yeah.
It gives you a unique window into the language and actually even the culture sometimes.
Exactly. And for you listening, someone who's keen to get the most knowledge, in the smartest way possible, this should be really insightful.
Absolutely. We've been digging into an article called Os membros da família em inglês, veja a árvore genealógica.
Which means,
Family members in English, see the family tree, basically.
gotcha.
And it's a great piece because it doesn't just list words. It gives us the essential English vocabulary for family, but also hints at some of the cultural ideas sort of baked into those terms.
Right. So the goal today is really to unpack this vocabulary, not just memorizing, but understanding how it connects to something we all get. So in this deep dive, we'll pull out the key English words, touch on some maybe unexpected cultural bits related to them, and even look at how building your own family tree in English could actually be a powerful way to learn.
It really can.
Okay, let's jump in. When we talk family, what are the absolute bedrock terms, the foundations?
Well, the article starts right there with the real basics.
Yeah.
Mother, that's main father, which is pay.
Okay.
Then brother, irmão, sister, irmão. Son is filho, daughter is filha.
Uh-huh.
And then grandfather, avô, grandmother, avô, uncle, tio, aunt, tia, and cousin, which covers both primo and primo.
Right, cousin's useful like that. Unisex.
Yeah, exactly. Think of these as the main trunk of the family tree, you know?
Yeah, you're right. These are roles we all recognize wherever we're from. It's funny, the article even mentions The Simpsons.
Oh, yeah. Homer, Marge.
Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, Maggie. Just as a quick visual for these basic family units, it's like that universally understood picture. Parents, kids, siblings.
It really is. And it's interesting how consistently these basic relationships are named across so many languages. The Simpsons example really hits that home.
Totally.
So building from that core, English then expands pretty logically, actually, to describe the immediate family a bit more specifically.
Right. So from mother and father, you get the collective term parents, and then the more informal, everyday ways. Mother becomes mom or mommy,
Right, depending on who's talking.
and father becomes dad or daddy. We already had daughter and son, and if you have both brothers and sisters, you call them
Siblings.
siblings.
Okay.
And a single filho or filha is a child, and more than one are children.
Exactly. It's kind of like peeling an onion, isn't it? Starting general, getting more specific.
Yeah, it is.
Then looking at the older generations, you've got grandmother, and then the more affectionate versions like grandma, maybe nana or granny.
Right, lots of options there.
Same for grandfather. You've got grandpa or granddad. And then looking the other way, the generations that follow, you have granddaughter and grandson. And collectively, they're your grandchildren.
Grandchildren. Okay, now this is where the tree starts branching out more, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned grandparents.
Hmm?
What about before them?
Yes. You add great-grandmother and great-grandfather.
Simple enough.
It is. That great just clearly signals one more generation back. It's pretty efficient linguistically.
That makes sense.
So following those lines out, you then have your aunt and uncle. Those are your parents' siblings.
Right.
And their children are your cousins.
Cousins, okay.
And then flipping it, the children of your siblings, they become your nieces if they're girls.
Nieces.
And nephews if they're boys.
Nieces and nephews, got it.
And just like with grandparents, you can add that great prefix again, great aunt, great uncle.
Ah, okay, so the pattern continues. That does make it a bit less daunting to learn all these wider connections, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The language gives you these helpful little structural clues. Now, the article then shifts gears a bit, moving into relationships formed outside direct bloodlines, specifically through marriage.
Okay, so partners and spouses.
Exactly. This is where you get terms like girlfriend and boyfriend. Then, if they're engaged, it's fiancé for a woman.
With 2 E's.
Yes, fiancé.
Yeah.
And fiancé for a man with 1 E.
Right. French origin, I guess.
And interestingly, the article points out the specific use of bride and groom. Those are really for the wedding day itself or when you're talking directly about the wedding ceremony.
That's a good distinction. So you wouldn't usually call someone your bride weeks after the wedding.
Not typically, no. You'd say my fiancé before, maybe my bride on the day, and then after the big day, she's your wife.
And he's your husband.
Right. And the general term covering either is spouse.
Spouse, okay. And marriage brings the in-laws.
Ah, yes, the in-laws, expanding the circle. You have mother-in-law and father-in-law. You can call them parents-in-law together, or just informally, the in-laws.
The in-laws, yeah.
Then the people your children marry become your daughter-in-law and son-in-law.
Okay.
And your spouse's siblings are your sister-in-law and brother-in-law. It definitely builds a whole web of relationships.
It really does. That in-law suffix clearly marks those connections made through marriage. Now, what about other family structures? The article mentions stepfamilies.
Yes, exactly. It covers stepmother, stepfather, stepdaughter, stepson, stepsister, and stepbrother.
And the key thing here is,
The key, as the article stresses, is no blood relation. These connections come through remarriage.
okay, so that's different from half-sister or half-brother.
Precisely. With half, there's a shared biological parent. English makes that distinction quite clear, which is useful.
It is. What else did the article cover in terms of roles?
It also brought in terms related to godparents.
Yeah.
Godmother, godfather,
Yeah.
and goddaughter, godson. The general term is godchild. These often have, significant cultural or religious weight.
Sure.
And then it mentioned maid of honor and best man.
Right, for weddings. Often close friends.
Yeah, usually friends, but they take on these key support roles during the wedding ceremony, almost like temporary family members.
Honorary family for the day, kind of.
Pretty much. Then the article touches on a few more specific terms, like heir and heiress.
For inheritance, right?
Exactly, someone who receives an inheritance. And then terms for loss. Widower for a man whose wife has died.
Widower.
Widow for a woman whose husband has died. And orphan for a child who's lost both parents.
Okay. Hopefully less common in everyday chat, but important vocabulary nonetheless.
Definitely. Now, here's a neat little linguistic thing the article points out, using the possessive case that apostrophes to describe family relationships.
Oh, right. Like instead of just saying granddaughter.
You could say my daughter's daughter.
I see.
Or my son's son for my grandson. It's like a mini description built into the phrase.
Yeah, it's like drawing the connection verbally. My sister-in-law's daughter.
Right.
That would be.
My niece. Exactly. And my brother-in-law's son is my nephew.
It feels a bit more detailed, sometimes maybe clearer.
It can be. For instance, my father's wife. That could be my mother or it could be my stepmother. Right. Depends on the situation.
Sure.
But then my father's father, no ambiguity there. That's always my grandfather.
And my mother's mother is my grandmother. Okay, that makes sense. It shows how the language gives you options for different levels of precision.
Exactly.
Okay, this next bit sounds really intriguing. The article talks about kissing kin and kissing cousin. What's that about?
Yeah, it's a great idiom. And no, it's not literal kissing.
Okay, good. Last.
It refers to distant relatives, people you're related to, but not closely.
Distant relatives. Kissing kin. Huh.
The idea is, like, they're related enough that you'd give them a social peck on the cheek, acknowledging the family tie.
Okay.
But distant enough that you might not actually know them very well. The article makes a good point that in cultures where kissing hello is super common anyway, maybe the term feels a bit different.
Yeah, that makes sense. It definitely gives you a little peek into cultural norms around like familiarity and distance.
It does. And then it shares this amazing story about Iceland.
Right.
Because Iceland has, a relatively small population, historically not much immigration. Lots of people are related to each other in, like, varying degrees.
Okay, I think I see where this is going.
Right. It's actually led to situations where people might accidentally start dating someone they're closely related to.
Wow. Seriously?
Seriously. So to help avoid this, they developed an app. It's called the Islandiga app.
An app. To check if you're related to your date.
Basically, yes. People can quickly check their family tree against someone else's to see how closely related they are, to see if they're maybe a bit too close for comfort beyond just kissing cousins.
That is wild.
Yeah.
But also kind of practical in their context.
It really is. It shows how important knowing those family connections is there. And the article mentions Icelanders have a strong tradition of keeping detailed family records anyway.
Well, that explains how the app can even work. What a story.
Isn't it?
It leads perfectly into the next idea, actually creating your own family tree in English. The article suggests a few simple steps. First, just jot down what you know, names, relationships, dates in your own language.
Just gather the info.
Then, the key step for language learning. Translate those relationship terms into English. Mother, uncle, grandmother, cousin, all that stuff.
Right. Get the English equivalents down.
And once you have that, The article suggests making a clean version, maybe drawing it out, using only the English terms.
The real magic here for you learning the language is that you're directly connecting these new English words, cousin, aunt, grandfather, to actual people you know, your own family, your own history.
Yeah, that personal connection makes the vocabulary so much stickier, doesn't it? Easier to remember.
Absolutely. The article uses a great comparison. Case 1, cousin means primo. Okay, that's head knowledge. Case 2, you know that Juan, Rodolfo, and Pedro are your cousins. You see their faces when you think of the word. That's a much stronger, more embedded kind of learning.
That makes perfect sense. That personal anchor is huge.
It really is. Now, the article doesn't just stop at naming relatives. It also gives some really useful phrases and questions for actually talking about family in English, everyday conversation stuff.
Ah, yeah, that's crucial. Things you'd actually use.
Exactly. Like asking, do you have a big family? Or maybe a small family?
And knowing how to answer like, my family is really big or small, or maybe I have an average-sized family.
Yeah. Or asking, who do you live with?
And answering, I live with my parents, or I live by myself. Basic but essential stuff.
Other good ones it lists, who do you look up to the most in your family?
Oh, that's a nice question.
Yeah. And the example answer is something like, I look up to my sister the most because she is extremely intelligent. We are very close.
That's a good model answer. Shows connection, too.
Definitely. And another one, who do you take after in your family? Meaning like, who do you resemble or who are you similar to?
Take after. Okay.
And the example is, I take after my mother. People always tell me I have her eyes.
Nice specific detail there. And of course, the classic, do you have brothers or sisters?
Right. Simple answers. Yes, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. Or, no, I'm an only child.
Only child. Good term to know.
And then, getting to know you questions about relationship status. Are you married?
With answers like, yes, I am. I'm married to an incredible man-woman. Or,
no, I'm single. Or, no, I'm divorced.
Right. These are definitely the building blocks for loads of conversations, aren't they?
Absolutely. And just to wrap things up, the article touches on a modern way to explore family connections even further, finding distant relatives online.
Like genealogy websites.
Exactly. It specifically mentions Family Search as a good resource. Apparently, you can use it to dig into your family history and maybe even find relatives you never knew existed.
That sounds potentially fascinating. How does it work?
Well, the article says you can make a free account, put in the family info you already know, names, dates, places.
Right.
And then the system cross-references your data with information from millions of other profiles and historical records. It might uncover connections like distant cousins or ancestors you didn't know about.
Wow, it could open up whole new branches of the family tree.
Potentially, yeah. And what's also cool, it mentions Family Search has features for sharing memories, photos, stories about your ancestors, so it helps bring that history to life.
That sounds really engaging.
It does. And again, as the article points out, this whole process, exploring your family's past, maybe connecting with distant relatives, you find it just further cements your understanding and use of all this English family vocabulary because it's tied to something deeply personal.
That's a great link back. So, okay, to kind of bring it all together then, we've covered a huge range of English family terms, haven't we?
We really have, from the absolute core, mother, father, sister, brother.
Right, through grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins.
Nieces, nephews, the greats.
And then the in-laws and step relationships, showing how language adapts to different family structures.
And we had that fascinating detour with Kissing Kin and the Icelandic app.
It was definitely memorable.
Yeah, and we kept coming back to the idea that creating your own family tree in English is a really effective learning tool.
Because it links the words directly to your life, your people.
Exactly. And ultimately, I think the big takeaway here is that learning family vocabulary in another language, it's way more than just memorizing a list of words.
Yeah.
It really offers a glimpse into shared human experiences, and how different cultures think about and define those really fundamental bonds of kinship.
That's a really nice way to put it.
It kind of encourages you to think about your own family story, too, and how language helps you shape and tell that story.
That's a fantastic point to end on, actually. Maybe this deep dive has sparked an idea for you listening. Perhaps building out your own family tree using these English terms could be a really interesting next step, both for the language and for discovering more about your own roots.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.